Hey yogis, MaKenzie Fly here, mom, yogapreneur, teacher trainer, retreat leader, and your guide to master your yoga teaching. This podcast is your weekly dose of actionable wisdom and candid chats with industry experts. Learn to connect deeper, weave yogic magic, and lead by example. Full disclosure, I'm still mastering it too, but together we'll skyrocket your impact and income. Hit subscribe and let's grow, one episode at a time. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to MYYT, where you are learning to level up your yoga teaching one masterful class at a time. It's a new month, which means it is a new mood. If you are new to the MYYT community, I absolutely love the beginning of the month because for my community, I create something called the monthly mood board. And I slide into your inbox on the first of every single month with this newsletter. It's a very special email that helps you just set the tone for the month ahead. This month, the theme around here is going to be Relentless Resilience, which is inspired by the incredible story of Diana Nyad. I have recently watched the Nyad movie on Netflix. Have you guys had a chance to check this out? This movie was so inspirational. I absolutely loved it. I highly recommend that you check it out. I think it's actually up for winning a couple of awards. It's really, really good. I can't off the top of my head remember the name of the actress who plays the lead, but it's got Jodie Foster in it and really, really good. Make sure you check it out. But in these solo episodes, I really love to share with you what has been inspiring me in hopes that it inspires you and gives you maybe an idea for a theme for your next yoga class or other content for your social media, your email list. I just want to give you some ideas so that maybe you yourself can share it from here. So that's what this whole theme of the month is inspired from, is this movie Nyad. If you haven't watched it, what it's really about is Diana Nyad, this Olympic, I don't even think she's technically an Olympic athlete. She's a really long distance, I guess, swimmer who had this lifelong dream and goal of swimming from Florida to Cuba. This is a 110-mile distance that would require her to be in the water for over 60 plus hours of constant swimming. My first question for you is, why would this be anybody's lifelong dream and goal? It sounds like my personal nightmare. As I've gotten older, I've definitely developed a healthy respect/fear for the ocean. And this movie gave me the same sort of energy of watching Top Gun, in the sense of I had no idea that flying in Top Gun could be so high stakes or so stressful. And when I was watching the Nyad movie, I had the same sort of feeling of like, oh my God, I had no idea that swimming could be this stressful. But imagine being in the water for 60 plus hours and swimming in the open ocean, basically alone, and all of the fatigue and the fears that can kind of come up with that. And what makes this movie and really the whole story of Diana Nyad so inspirational is that an attempt like this, a feat like this, is definitely going to challenge you to your limits, physically speaking, but also mentally speaking. And a thing that the movie did really well was underscore this technique that Diana would use to overcome the physical demands and the mental temptation to give up. And one of the things that they highlighted in the movie was that she would use this counting method of counting her breathing to help her maintain the sense of concentration and therefore going into a little bit of meditation. So as I'm watching this, as you probably do being a yoga teacher yourself, I'm like, this is so yogic. Do you have that happen to you where you're listening to a song or you're in a conversation with somebody, you're watching a movie, whatever it is, and you see yoga in that experience? I had that when I was watching this movie and knew that it would be great material for a class theme. So to kind of finish out and tell you a little bit more about the movie, she has to attempt this goal multiple times in her life. I think the first time she tries to swim from Florida to Cuba, she's like in her 30s, and it doesn't happen that time. And she tries a couple more times. I think it wasn't until the fourth time, when she is well into her 60s, that she finally accomplishes this thing. There's so many kind of scenes in the movie that really stick out as being poignant and that stick out as being memorable. One of the biggest moments is when she is on the fourth time, and she doesn't know this at the time, but this is the time that she actually ends up swimming the whole thing. Her coach has to actually like jump in the water with her, and tell her, hey, you are on the last leg of the race. Like, we can see the coastline of either Cuba or Florida. I don't remember which way she's swimming, but they're like, we can see land. You're so, so close. And isn't that so true that whenever you feel like you are about to make it to the finish line, you can see it in insights that that's when it gets the most challenging, that that's when you fight the most demons. It's almost like the dark night of the soul moment. All right, I think it's in Dark Night of the Soul where they say that it's the darkest just before the dawn. It's the hardest often, whether it's in an athletic feat like Diana is doing, or really any other endeavor in your life, whether it's in your career or your family. But sometimes it's the very, very hardest just before it breaks into being over. And that moment really stuck out to me because Diana is just about to give up and she is feeling so exhausted. Like she has no gas left in her tank. And the coach sees this and has to dive into the water and swim up next to her, but can't touch her because that would disqualify her from the race. But she's swimming next to her and she just says, Diana, give me one more stroke. And Diana does it. And then the coach says, again, just give me one more stroke. And she keeps kind of saying this until Diana finds within herself this relentless resilience to come back and try again. So I really loved that moment. It stuck out. And then at the end of the movie, when she finally does step on land, it's like the most triumphant. There's tons of people there to celebrate the incredible thing that she's done. She shares with the like crowd that has gathered around to see her do this thing that 3 points. She goes, I want to say 3 things to everybody. Never give up is the first thing. The second, you're never too old to chase your dreams. And the third is that although it may seem like a solitary sport, this took a team. And so as I'm watching this movie, I'm feeling super inspired, but I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much to work with when it comes to using this story or the life of Diana Nyad to infuse into a yoga class as an inspirational message or as a meaningful message. I do want to be clear though, you do not have to theme your yoga classes for them to be really impactful, for them to be really memorable. But I will say leveraging the skill of storytelling or utilizing the art of theme weaving in your yoga classes can really help make your classes stand out. It can give your students a story, which usually stories are things that students can remember and then also tell other people about. And that's what's really cool when it comes to not only attracting kind of your dream students, when it comes to retaining your students, something that helps is to turn your students into your walking billboards for you. And how you do that is by telling really great stories sometimes, because then those students go, I took this really awesome class with this yoga teacher and they told this story and they're just kind of sharing what they learned from you with their friends, which helps when it comes to spreading the word about your classes and the types of experiences that you really create. So what I want to do now that I've just given you a brief summary of the actual movie is show you how you can use this story to illustrate some yogic points, and give you some ideas of how you can drop it in your next yoga class. I actually had one of my key teachers, Johnny Cast, teach a class using this theme. And I just remember being like, oh man, this is so inspiring. And it helped me really dig down deep and give a lot more to the class than I probably could have if he wasn't telling this incredible, inspiring story about Diana Nyad, who would not give up and who would just keep digging down and finding and uncovering this strength. So I want to make it really clear that that's the power of theming, is that why would you want to tell a story when you're teaching a yoga class, it's because it can be one more thing. It's one more tool that you can give to your students to help them stretch beyond their ordinary limits and their ordinary levels. Here we go. Let's see if we can kind of do this. It's a challenging task to do, just listening, but we'll do our best. The very first sort of law, if you will, I actually call them the spiritual laws of theming. One thing that you always need to keep in mind when you try to theme a yoga class, and one thing that's going to make it really successful, is to always, always, always relate this idea back to the yoga tradition. You have to show your students how exactly the story that you're sharing is like yoga, or else it's just going to feel really, really random and awkward. And when I talk to a lot of yoga teachers, they say often that this is what they struggle with is they're like, I had this cool idea, or I saw this awesome quote on Instagram, or wherever it may be that you found that thing that inspired you. But when you go to drop that cue in class, or when you go to tell that story, when you go to share that quote, whatever it is, because often this is what I see is teachers don't necessarily relate it back to the yoga tradition. So then it just feels like it was way out of left field, or like, oh, that was a random sidebar. So that's the one piece of advice that I want to really give you this week with the Diana Nyad story is while you're telling this story of her and her life and her achievement and accomplishments, however you tell it and thread it and weave it through class, make sure that you are relating it to the yoga tradition and making it clear how this is the same. So I'll give you a couple of examples and hopefully you can see how you can do this in your next class. I encourage you to come up with 5 points, what I call actually breadcrumbs, to drop throughout the class so that these thematic cues aren't heavy-handed in either the beginning of class or the end of class. That's what I affectionately call Dharma dumping, where it's a really awesome idea, but it's way too much all at once. And it starts to feel kind of like this lecture as opposed to a asana class that is primarily a moving and breathing class, the hatha yoga, the yoga of breath and posture, but you're infusing these thematic cues while you're also delivering your anatomical cues. You're keeping the class going, and that these thematic cues are not getting in the way of continuing to teach a really strong posture class. But these thematic cues are enhancing that physical yoga class. What a thing that can really help this is breaking up these points into 5 little bite-sized bits that you're going to disperse among the entire class experience. In general, I recommend that you drop these cues at the beginning of class within the first 5 minutes, somewhere around the 15-minute mark, the 30-minute mark, the 45-minute mark, and then around the 55-minute mark. And this is assuming that you're teaching a 60-minute yoga class. So for example, the other day I taught a vinyasa yoga class using Diana Nyad's story as a theme. Okay, the first breadcrumb you want to say within the first couple of minutes of class. I recommend allowing a couple minutes, a minute or two of complete silence in the beginning of all of your classes, just to allow your students to really settle, to drop in, and to feel like there's just this pause. I think so many of us are go, 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 and especially our students, like they had to do whatever they had to do to get there. And that moment at the very beginning of class is so precious. Just give a couple moments of stillness and silence. You wouldn't want to drop your breadcrumb kind of right out of the gate. You'd want to leave kind of a moment in the clear. But let's say that it's been a couple of minutes and my students are in silence. I might start out by saying something to the effect of, I recently watched this movie on Netflix called Nyad. Maybe you've seen it. It's the incredible story of Diana Nyad and her relentless resilience to accomplish her lifelong dream of swimming from Florida to Cuba. I was inspired by this movie because in the movie, she talks about a single technique that she used to face her fear and fight her fatigue, which was to count her breathing. It's a really actually quite yogic concept. Like Diana Nyad, you too, right here and right now, can become aware of your breathing. begin to deepen your breath, breathing in and out through your nose, and so on and so forth. Then you would move on into cueing the pranayama, whatever is your pranayama technique that you're using in class, and the sequence that you would use to warm up. Do you see how I infused both the thematic cues, so told a little bit of the story, but then also didn't talk too long. It wasn't this long lecture that I expounded on. It was just, hey, I saw this story. I was inspired by it because of this. And this is actually what yoga is founded on, is built upon, is this same idea. So let's start to put it into practice. And then you dive into class. This is a really great way to begin a class because the thematic cue is dropped right out of the gate. You want to make sure that you do it at the beginning, because if you don't, sometimes what will happen is you teach a whole class and then you're like, oh, shoot, I should be saying something inspiring. Let me just drop this random quote that I saw on Instagram at 50 minutes into class. And that's not really effective because it's not weaved throughout the whole class experience. So by dropping your first breadcrumb within the first 5 minutes will really, really help you almost foreshadow where you're going with the entire class. Around 15 minutes into class, I would drop the second breadcrumb, which is never give up. Let's say, for example, my students are flowing through their second flow, their second wave, depending on how you structure your sequences and class. But let's say they're flowing. I could say something like, Diana actually attempted this race from Florida to Cuba multiple times and failed. It wasn't until her fourth attempt at 64 years old that she finally made it. So you might be feeling that the postures, the sequences are pretty challenging. They're starting to really call upon not just your physical strength, but your emotional strength. Be like Diana and decide to never give up. Come back to either counting your breathing or becoming aware of your breathing and try again. Beautiful. See how those types of cues are telling the story, but at the same time relating the story back to what they are doing in this exact moment of doing the sequences, of trying to remember the poses. And it's teaching them something beyond just the physicality of the poses, whatever shapes are in your second sequence. It's not just talking about warrior A, warrior B, or chair pose, whatever, but it's teaching everybody these qualities of come back, try again, don't give up. It's really effective. To be cheeky, what I actually did in my class the other day around this breadcrumb, I had my students, I think they were flowing, and I said something like, one moment in the movie, Diana is actually stung by a box. I think it's called a boxwood, some type of jellyfish. And Diana says, fire, fire, fire. I don't necessarily have a jellyfish to throw at you, but I do have something that will sting. Let's meet up in bow pose. So that's lame. I completely can almost feel and hear you rolling your third eye at me as you listen to this recording. But I tend to like to be a little cheeky or even a little funny sometimes. So that might be a little joke that you could play with of, again, alluding back to the movie, but you're weaving it in a way that still keeps the class momentum going. Around 30 minutes, I would drop the third breadcrumb. And this is the second piece of advice that Diana gives after she completes the race, which is you're never too old. I could include this thematic idea during the class by saying something like, notice how as you're moving through the shapes, each and every round, it starts to feel better and better. Because of the poses, you're feeling lighter, you're feeling brighter, things are working better. You might even feel younger. No, it's not true that you're too old to chase your dreams. In fact, Diana Nyad says exactly that. After she finished the race, she said, you're never too old to chase your dreams. So don't believe that lie. Come on back in and don't give up. Keep trying. Keep chasing your dreams. Something to that effect. Around the 45-minute mark, I would drop the fourth breadcrumb. And this is the third piece of advice that Diana gives once she finishes the race, which is, although it may seem like a solitary sport, it takes a team. And so I really encourage, especially within the context of this exact theme, is to save this breadcrumb or this little golden nugget of wisdom for the hardest moment of class. Put your students in either a really challenging sequence or a really challenging pose and hold them there for a while. And you could tell the story of the moment in the movie where Diana is she's swimming, right? And she's so close. She has made it farther than she has ever made it before. This is her fourth attempt, and she doesn't know it in the moment, but this is the time that she actually makes it. And this is when she's like feeling so dead, like there's nothing left. And her coach sees that she is really struggling. And so the coach actually jumps into the water with her and swims up to her and says, "Hey, I need you to give me one more stroke, just one more stroke." And so Diana does it. And the coach says again, "Okay, just two more strokes." And Diana does it. And she goes, "Okay, I need you to give me five more strokes." And Diana does it. And so back to this idea that if you concentrate on your breathing, it becomes not just concentration, but it moves into meditation. And that all you have to do is just do the very next one. That is something that can help you uncover this incredible reservoir of both endurance as well as stamina and resilience. So you could say something to that effect of notice how when you focus on the breathing, it helps you ride the waves with more grace. And if you're swimming against the current and it feels really hard, like you have nothing left, or you get stung by a freaking jellyfish, your yoga, this practice, what you're doing right now, literally swimming through all of these sensations, sweating. It's almost like you're swimming in the ocean of your own sweat. It's helping you cultivate the same relentless resilience that Diana Nyad found during her epic race. Something to that effect. At around the 55-minute mark, or when you're trying to close your yoga practice, you want to put on a beautiful bow tie and package this theme in a nice little clear, concise way that yoga students take with them off the mat and into the rest of their day. So you might say something, or I said something like, you could think of your yoga practice as learning how to swim. That inevitably the waves are going to come. The sea creatures are going to come. But in spending a little bit of time each and every day moving and breathing, you get this opportunity to concentrate on your breathing and cultivate relentless resilience that will change how you navigate the rest of your day. Hopefully, you can make that a little more clear and concise, a little shorter and sweeter at the end, but you get the idea that that's something that you could say to put a nice little bow on the package, and that students feel like they not only got this really amazing work out, but they got this super great work in, where they are reminded that yoga is not just about these poses, and it's not about perfecting the poses, but it's about using the poses and the sequences to perfect this quality, this universal quality that we all can have of incredible resilience, especially in the face of struggle, especially in the face of discomfort. I hope you found this really helpful, and I hope that you're super inspired by it and that you have an actionable and tangible way to use it in your next yoga class. I would love to hear how it goes. Please always feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at Master Your Yoga Teaching. Let me know if it worked for you, and if you have students come up to you after and say that it was super inspirational. I had the same. I had about 5 or 6 people come up and say how much they enjoyed it and what a powerful message it was. Poses that really work for this theme, a way to kind of take it even further and beyond, is to put poses in there that allude to the meaningful message that you're infusing into the whole class. So I really think like a side angle could work really well somewhere in here, because as you know, in this shape, it's not only a lunge, but it's this huge side stretch. So that top arm is stroking up and overhead. So you could say something like, if your students are in that pose, you might say, feel how that top arm overhead is like a swim stroke. As if you yourself are Diana Nyad, turn your chin like a swimmer, like breaks the surface of the ocean to take another sip of air. Keep breathing. Really, really cool ways to infuse the theme more into the postures, infuse the theme more into the way that you cue your students. Other postures that really work for this are all prone postures, poses that are done on the belly, like Shalabhasana locust, Dhanurasana floor bow, of course, Navasana boat pose, since it's sort of this theme all about water and navigating kind of the uncharted, vast expanse of the ocean. What better shape than boat pose? I also created for you a really awesome playlist that has lyrics, that has words that speak to this theme, whether it's mentioning, like, I think in there is Billie Eilish's like Ocean Eyes, Frank Ocean's Swim Good, stuff like that, that it's really cool when a yoga class, not only the teacher has this theme, they're using their words to tell a story, but the teacher is also putting in poses that speak to the story. And even more so, they're playing songs that underscore and undercurrent the same mood. So I made a playlist for you, and I send that to my community at the beginning of every single month. This is what's included in your monthly mood board: is a theme inspiration, an idea for your next yoga class theme, the recommended reading of the month, a class playlist. I give you journal prompts. I give you affirmations. So when I say we are setting a mood, we are setting a mood. So it's going to put you in the right headspace. All you need to do to get this monthly email is check out the show notes below and subscribe to my newsletter. I'll be sliding in at the beginning of every month with a similar story with suggested postures and playlists for you. Okay, awesome. I hope that you enjoyed that, and I really can't wait to hear how you use it in your next class. What's next for me in the month of April is I have my Tulum yoga retreat coming up in the middle of April. I am headed to Amansala Yoga Resort with Rachaka Retreats for our recharge retreat. And I am so, so excited to head to Mexico, hang out on the beach, and lead another yoga retreat. I hope you also have exciting things coming up in the month. I know that with April comes tax season, so I don't know how you feel about that. Doing your taxes, hopefully you get a nice return. Next year around this time, I really want to feature a yoga teacher who is also a CPA, or maybe a CPA who also practices yoga, so we can talk about the importance of planning and preparing for your taxes. So just know that I have that coming, and I really am hoping to create that for you, because I know that this season for independent contractors or people like us, yoga teachers who are entrepreneurs and self-employed, need a lot more guidance on something like that. So if you guys are listening and you know a CPA who practices yoga, please send me their contact. This time next year, we're going to have a Tax Tapas for Yoga Teachers episode. Coming up in the next couple of weeks, we have incredible guests for you that are going to bring so much value to you and your yoga teaching. I'm so excited to feature people like Anthony Chavez, Ruby Chandler, and Jonah Kest. If you are getting so much out of this podcast, do me a favor and please, please, please send it to 2 or 3 of your yoga teacher friends and help me spread the word about this podcast. If you also feel so called, it's really helpful if you would pause this episode right now and rate the show by dropping a 5-star rating. It helps boost this show and be shown to the right people, yoga teachers like you who are looking to really hone their skills, to grow their craft, and serve students better by teaching more impactful classes. I hope you found this episode helpful. I'm so grateful to you, and I hope that you feel like the month ahead of April is off to a better start, that you're in the right mindset, you've got the right mood and vibe. Keep coming back each and every week for your dose of actionable wisdom. And until next Wednesday, namaste blessed. Thanks for listening. If this is your first time, peruse our feed to see if there's something else that will serve you. We're so grateful that you're here and invite you to join our inner circle by subscribing to our newsletter. If this episode resonated with you, help us spread the word by sending it to a friend who needs to hear this message. Likes, follows, sends, shares, and reviews help us to continue delivering high-quality content to you for free each and every week. Don't forget to tag @MasterYourYogaTeaching so we can reshare. I am a certified yogi. However, this podcast is intended for information and entertainment only. If you are interested in mentorship or coaching with me, check out the website linked in the show notes to get more information. This content and other content produced by CLW Studios and affiliated partners is not therapy, and nothing in this content indicates a therapeutic relationship. Any opinions of guests on the podcast are their own and do not represent the opinions of MaKenzie or CLW Studios. Learn more about MaKenzie, her guests, and CLW Studios by following the links in the show notes. Keep shining, and we will see you next Wednesday for another dose of Master Your Yoga Teaching. Namaste blessed.